You reading my emails and stealing books from my library?
What implicit trust is.
Lines of alignment, right? But it was just this beautiful weaving. He talks a lot about the conversation of life, right?
Yeah, again, thank you for taking my notice. And
Yeah.
I, I honestly don't know how the algorithms work on Substack, but
Yeah.
yours in particular, when I started to read you, I'm thinking, I think we're reading the same things or had the same experiences or on the same path, or I'm
Yeah.
not really sure, but because everything you're writing in your meditations and they just resonate. And it sounds as if I could be almost like inside your head a little bit, you know?
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I felt the same, right? That's what I think I put on my email to you. You reading my emails and stealing books from my library?
I've been in that space of gathering and sitting with what implicit trust is. And one of the examples I kind of think about sometimes is, well, implicit trust is like when you're driving a car and there's just a line between you and another car going the other direction.
Mm,
It's not a it's not a wall, but you
yeah,
just know that you're supposed to be on one side of the line. And it connects deeply with my practice of the Tao and everything else, really. I mean, all the readings I do and my study of theosophy, which is
mm,
a space that I've really uh, engaged in quite a bit because I'm a learner of Jiddu Krishnamurti. He's
mm,
been somebody in my life since I began my university days. Then I didn't understand a word he said, so I put him back down after, it was an ethics class I had actually, and I
yeah,
took that book and I returned it back to the bookstore because I'm like, it makes no sense, none. And
yeah,
then, years later, he pops up in a bookstore and there he is in front of me. I pick him up and I read the book. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I need to get this book again.
yeah, yeah.
So, but I just want to lead with that and just to acknowledge that what you write and what your thoughts are and the energy you put into it, it does definitely have an effect in the world. And I'm just a representative of that for you, being on the other side of the
Yeah,
world, literally, and different
literally.
hemispheres.
Yeah.
So,
No, I appreciate that very much. I mean, needless to say, as I dove into what you've been writing and your videos, there's just so many lines of alignment, right? So,
mm,
and I looked at some of the people that you like, Krishnamurti. I mean, 1972, I'm at university and I'm reading Krishnamurti, and like you, I went, okay, I need to be really cool, so I won't say I don't understand a word of it.
yeah, yeah.
So, because in cool conversations, I can go, yeah, Krishnamurti says this, right? So, and it was probably 30 years later when I read it properly, and I went, wow, okay, I think I'm beginning to get this, right? So,
Exactly.
and I see that you spent time with David White, and
Mm,
for me, I love his poetry, and I love
mm,
where he goes in that,
mm,
and I think I told you, I listened to him recently in Byron Bay, and it was a 4 hour workshop, really. It was really a magical mystery tour of him quoting from memory his capacity just to quote himself and John O'Donoghue and Blake and you name it, whoever, right? Just from memory. But it was just this beautiful weaving, and he talks a lot about the conversation of life, right?
that's right.
And I think for me, that's where the connection with what you started out with the trust comes in, in the sense that um, our conversation with others and with life is just happens on many, many levels, right? So as you say, you have a conversation with a person. There's all other kinds of elements that are at work where you begin to get a sense of, can I build trust with this person? Am I trustworthy to them? All of those elements, right? And I think what one of the things I love about David White is because he's such a beautiful writer, so a lot of it's implicit within the writing. But
Mm,
the thing that I wrote about in the recent article, which is that I think the essence of trust begins with the internal journey, right?
mm,
The recognition, relatively recent for me. Well, 25 years of kind of the non-dual path making sense, beginning to make sense to me, right? Uh, it probably made sense to me intellectually prior to that, but then experientially, and it just strikes me as fundamental, right? That to have the learning to trust and become trustworthy is not just a skill development thing. It's not just a personal development. It can be that, right? It can be that, right? But I think the essential resilience to be able to actually engage in a conversation where real trust is there or potentially there um, comes from knowing and experiencing we can't be separate, right? We cannot be separate from each other, right? So if that's true, then how I value you becomes fundamentally different than
Yeah,
you're just the expression of me in a different form, right? So,
exactly.
uh,
Yeah,
so that to me kind of builds a foundation to what trust can be that I think is often um, not dealt with enough. Yeah.